There it went. Oh, yeah.
David Eckenrod, another late start for a Laffy show. That's what people just assume that it's my fault that these shows are late. Today it is because I have done a million pieces of content already. Generally has nothing to do with me for what it's worth. Jordan Klein, you can attest to that. It is the truth.
Yeah, you're right.
That's not convinced. I want more conviction. It's not my fault.
It's not your fault.
Thank you. It's not my
It's
fault.
not your fault. Stop it.
For what
Fuck
it's
you.
worth, today
it.
is my fault. But
Oh, okay.
most of the time, not my fault.
I was doing a Goodwill Hunting bit, but it's okay.
We wait on tools to get updated sometimes. And that's, like we want to have the tools as good as they can be for these shows. David Eckenrod. Hey, what's going on, guys? Happy to have you guys with us. It is the stochastic.com NFL showdown or NFL strategy. See, I've already done so many shows. NFL strategy show, ownership, top stacks edition. So if in case you guys are wondering, and I'm sure some of you are, I already saw some comments in chat. With NBA starting, we're moving things around a little bit. A lot of work on a lot of people's plates. No excuse by any stretch, but we figured it would make more sense. We don't need strategy show 5 days a week right now. So the matchup strategy show pretty similar, even though I love doing that with Eric is and Neil will be sorely missed on the ownership show as well, but you'll have him on plenty of stuff. You'll see him tonight as well on all the showdown stuff. But we're moving the showdown show to Thursday. And then we'll still have the sim strategy show tomorrow, tournament strategy show Saturday. We'll still have the long ass deeper dive live before a lock, first look, all that stuff on Sunday, and the first look show on Tuesday. So that about sums it up. Eric, how you doing, brother?
Doing well. Getting ready to rock here for NFL. It's just been NBA the last couple of days for me. 11 games now coming down the pipeline for tomorrow, but just kind of piecing all of that together, just firing up content. I was going to say, I'm not going to complain to you though, because the hardest working man at Stochastic over there.
Depends the time of year.
There's a lot of chest on you today. You're like ready to rock, buddy. Are we
dude,
playing to like a different clientele here? What are we doing?
You know what? Maybe I should pull their up.
No.
I like they're very breathable. You know what I mean? Breathable.
Yeah. It gets a little steamy down there in the basement now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's gonna be 75 here.
The hell?
75 here today. Kind of nice. Yeah, kind of nice. Different clientele.
Just saying. I didn't know who we were catering to today.
Some people might like it, man.
I was gonna say,
let
it breathe. Let it breathe. Oh man.
Yeah, man. Happy to have you guys with us as always. We love doing this show, whether it's ownership, whether it's matchups, whatever. We've got ownership projections up and all that good stuff going into week 8. Man, no bye weeks this week either. No bye weeks. So you got 13 games on the main, no London games, Europe games. Next week, though, in Germany, you've got Chiefs Dolphins. That should be a fun one.
That's going to be really fun. Like finally London gets an actual football game, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Philip, and very nice weekend. Great for grilling on Saturday. Hell yeah, Phil. I already told my wife on Saturday might be the last time I used a grill, used a Blackstone, anything like that. Yeah. Might be the last time of the year. See, for you in California, it's different. But we are based on weather around here. We have seasons. Yeah.
Well, that's good for you.
We don't have forest fires, earthquakes, or mudslides, though, so that's nice.
Those are pluses for sure. And then go to Arizona part of the time, and it's like rattlesnakes, and it's just you always got something out here out west. But definitely one of those things where I do not miss like the November, December months. I do miss October. October, when it starts to get chilly, you can wear the sweaters around pretty much all the time. You got the hoodie. You're ready to rock at any moment in time. You're always comfortable. It gets a little bit unseasonably hot out here times. Just not nearly as fun. But yeah, definitely don't miss winter.
Green check mark with a valuable insight said London isn't in Germany. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was in Germany. Well, we learned something today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But yeah,
the game, however, is in Germany.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. The game is in Germany. Anyway.
My bad. I'm an idiot.
For what?
For Europe. Did I say London? Or
no. I said there's no London or Europe game. this week, and I used that to say next week, do we have one in Germany?
Next week, yeah, the nice one in Germany. They finally, Europe gets one. I might have said London after the fact, but I meant Frankfurt, yeah.
David Eckenrod, maybe cook up some calamari this weekend, Lob. Well, you just want to see me hit the squid chop?
Squid chop, son. Take the lights out.
I don't think I can buy live squid, though. I don't think it's like the lobster.
I was going to do it like a...
Yeah, just dead.
Go on.
If I could, I might. Because calamari is the best.
It's delicious. I don't really know how to make it like breaded.
I don't. I'm sure you could do it.
Yeah, I just kind of boil it.
Is it deep fried? It's got to be deep fried, right?
I would assume so. I'm not a big deep fryer of things.
Me neither. I've thought about getting one, but then I just thought I'd be dead by 2025. You know what I mean?
Honey, I'm going to go out on the... I'm going to go... I mean, the blacktop is one thing. That's a whole other ball of wax. And it's literally a ball of wax going in your tummy every day.
The Blackstone?
No. Deep fryer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be bad because I'd be like, oh, it's pretty easy. Just drop it in a basket. Be pretty sweet, though.
Would be.
Anyway. Yeah.
Ownership.
Ready to talk some football?
I am.
You guys are the best. As always, take a single second, hit that thumbs up, atone for your sins here on Thursday morning. Yeah. Subscribe to the channel as well. We got basketball, we got football, we got college football. Fucking trash Phillies are out of it, so yeah. I will speak no more of baseball. But we got a lot, man. We got a lot going on here. If you're a fan of all this stuff, free content, you think it helped you along the way, show us some love, subscribe. But you know what, the least you can do is watch. And if you want, all of our podcast exclusive content can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. We got several podcast exclusive content pieces that are only in podcast form, but also this and all of our other stuff with Shelf Life goes straight into podcast as well. So if you want to use that form of listening, go for it, do it. And leave us a review and rating too while you're at it. All right, so let's go. The way we do this, for those of you guys new to this show, expecting the matchup show, we hit a quick weekend review. Just look at the Millie Maker lineup, look at the ownership. As Neil would say, the combinatorial ownership for that one. Look at the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, then top stacks. The reason we look at stacks last and not quarterbacks at the top is because we had a first look show on Friday or Tuesday where we go position by position, top stacks and wide receivers. It lets us put the pieces together, tie everything together at the end. So let's make it happen, man. Running back shocked me when I saw the ownership on Joe Mixon to start. I'm just going to throw it to you right there. The Joe Mixon ownership, despite the price point and workload, I was quite surprised to see him right now as the highest projected owned player against the Niners.
Yes and no. I mean, for me, it comes down to like what that workload's going to look like for him. And as long as he's going to be, 5,800, we just continue to go down, down, down. He's been terrible in terms of efficiency. 12 for 38 against Seattle. It's been brutality. If you have him in best ball, you're not doing great. But 5,800 now, it's just such a price overcorrection now at this point in time. This is somebody with 6,800 starting out the season. And you look at the cheapies, this range of guys that he's going to be around, the Breece Halls. I'm curious to get your take on our dude, I would say. But I think what this is just somebody who's continuing to play 80, 90% of snaps. And that's just going to be what we have going forward. And that's going to make him project out decently well, because you got to think that we've been at the floor for a while. It's a very tough San Francisco matchup. I do think guys like Pollard, I think guys like McCaffrey on the other side of this will get steamed up a little bit, and you're probably going to see Mixon fall down the board a little bit, but he's definitely going to be in that 15-ish% range for sure.
Let me back up for a second. As I went over what we were doing, I completely forgot to do what I said.
What we were going to do. Yeah. But then I just answered your question and rolled with it.
You did. That's okay. Next time, feel free to correct me. Even I am fallible, Eric.
No. Yeah, never. Never.
Death Star Canteen won the Millie with an 11% Mahomes, 10% Donta Foreman, 15% Gibbs, 4% Cortland Sutton, Jackson Smith and Jigba at 12%, Josh Downs at 2%, Travis Kelce at 18%, Andrews at 20%, and Browns at 13%. Ben and I went over this on the podcast exclusive when we looked at the post-contest simulator, but isn't that crazy? What an interesting build. When Ben and I talked all week about maybe go 5K tight ends, like a Waller and an Andrews or a Laporta. This guy went Kelce and Andrews with the Mahomes single stack and just absolutely dominated. At no point was anyone close to touching him in this lineup.
No, and the lineup is put together in such a way where, when you hit, and it all starts with that Foreman piece. I mean, you guys were on it. I did not go that direction. The Jackson Smith and Jigba play is obviously the super sharp one. If you were playing tournaments and you didn't end up jamming Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think you got to check your process a little bit at the door. It was going to be late news. DK Metcalf gets ruled out after lock, and unlike the NBA, people aren't late swapping the way they're supposed to be. I preach it all the time on that Live Before Lock show, where you want to use the information, especially when you're talking about almost half of the games on a slate like that, where it's like 6-7 games that you're going to have on the front end before that you've got waiting in the wings. There's a lot of ways to maneuver around pieces from the early games and make sure you're set up for success. And obviously, you needed to find your way to Kelsey in some capacity. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, I thought, was just an absolute smash home run play, sub 4K. Didn't really change his usage as much as I thought, but obviously not having DK Metcalf on the field as opposed to Bobo, who made an amazing catch. But like that, I feel like that's the guy that if you didn't play a ton of, you got to just double check yourself a little bit.
I agree. Could have had a much bigger game too.
Oh, for sure. He didn't do anything in the second half, and they just started running the ball with Kenneth Walker into the back of the offensive line over and over again.
It was brutal. Min Eastwood said it was National Tight Ends Day after all.
Oh my God. I could not. I had to mute Red Zone for a while. I couldn't do it anymore. It was
horrible. I tweeted about it. I was like, if I hear this one more fucking time. But Min Eastwood, I didn't even think about that. You're right. A dual expensive tight end lineup won the Millie on National Tight Ends Day. I didn't even think about that. That's crazy. And I always want to throw in the winning like mid-stakes single entry lineup. Just this is an ownership show, give you guys an idea of how different things can look. The winning SPY lineup is $100 entry, 500K prize pool, 100K up top, so 20% to first. Mahomes at 10%, Donta Foreman at 10%, Kenneth Walker at 62%. He wasn't even that good. Drake London at 10, Palmer at 15, Rashee Rice at 14, Travis Kelce at 16, JSN at 17, and Browns at 14. There wasn't a single player I'm rounding up on Mahomes 9.9. There was not a single player in this lineup under 10%, double chief stack, which I can never get right. And he took down 100K, Eric. I mean, just look at the difference between that and the Millie lineup and understand why lineup construction can be so much different and so much more nuanced for what type of contest you're entering. This right here is a perfect representation of why that matters every week.
Yeah, every single week. It's something that you need to be thinking about what contests you're playing in, how many entries you have, and how unique you need to get. And we have tools here, whether it's the Sims tool and being able to recognize highest expected ROI lineups for you. A lot of those are going to have low-owned pieces that give you a lot of leverage in large field contests with heavy payouts. For these other ones, you can be a little bit more balanced and chalky because projections have gotten better, both in ownership and actual, the player projections that you have for guys. As that's increased, I think the field's just gotten a little bit sharper. So you can play hashtag the best plays and be just fine in a lot of situations. But yeah, as you get to the Millie, a little bit more nuanced.
All right, baby, I'm back on track. Next time, guys, feel free to correct me. So, yo, what are you doing?
So Joe Mixon.
Yo, hold on. Just for those, I know we have a ton of NFL and NBA overlap on these shows, and we appreciate you guys watching both sports. Just for this opening week, NBA, all of our packages are 20% off. I wanted to get that out there for you guys so you know. Links in the description and chat. If you just want the lineup generator, phenomenal tool. I mean, for football too, for everything. We saw the massive, when we were doing NBA, MLB shows every day, just the massive MLB wins coming in every day and screenshots from the lineup generator. People playing like, $20, shipping 2K and stuff like that. It's awesome if you're trying to get your foot in the door. It's the best tool out there for the price, whether it's NFL, NBA, except NBA is 20% off right now, but NFL still the best price you're going to find for a tool like this. All that stuff. And the Sims, as Eric mentioned, Sims 20% off the whole package, not just the Sims. It's not like you get that and then you got to get everything else. It's the entirety, every single NBA tool that we have is in that one package, including the premium Discord, every tool, every piece of data, 20% off for the first week. So if you're interested, and you're playing both, link in the description and in chat. Personally, I will use the NBA Sims tool more than I will finally be able to play NBA again and feel decent about it because it has the late swap. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have another kid coming on the way in less than a month. Without a Sims tool, I'm not I can tell you right now, I'm not playing NBA. That's a guarantee. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, now you're going to be awake until midnight to be able to swap and do all of the things that you need to as well.
Yeah, but I can just plug them in and late swap with the late swap.
Exactly. It's incredible. I've been screwing around with it yesterday. It was a lot of fun. And just because there's no injury news doesn't mean you shouldn't be swapping at times too. You're going to get changes in starting lineups. You're going to have lineups that you're looking for leverage. You can go in pretty easily and adjust things ever so slightly and take a little bit of a manual override. If there's a specific player that, if you've got people ahead of you with a specific player, you can still use some of the game theory for it. And it's just an awesome tool. The more I use it, the more I'm going to be utilizing it every single day. And I think you guys should be too.
Yep. And of course, anyway, all of our NFL stuff down there too. I know some of you guys might be purely NFL. You want to check those tools out, go for it. But I figured I'd let you know 20% off everything for NBA for the week. All right. So Mixon's up there. You asked about Breece Hall. I'll tell you what, I like Breece Hall this week, and I'm going to just move around a little bit. So work with me here. Feel free to go wherever you want. We have ownership. I'm sure you guys in chat will be, or you guys watching this after the fact too, will be fine with this. I think Breece Hall at 16% is a great play. It's a really low total game. I don't care all that much. He played almost 70% of snaps last week or 2 weeks ago before the bye. Really tough matchup against the Eagles, by the way. He didn't have a good game, okay? I say he didn't because they let him score. Aside from that, it would have been an underwhelming game. But still, the work was there. When players were touching the ball in the backfield, it was Breece Hall. Giants defense isn't terrible, but their offense isn't going to stay on the field. Give me Breece Hall. But I'll tell you what, man, there are some really low-owned guys that when I saw their projected ownership, I know it's Thursday, this will update throughout the week, but when I saw the ownership on Derrick Henry at 2.4%, guys, that line moved through 3 down to 2.5. Titans 2.5-point dogs now, even though we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. 2% ownership on Henry. If Aaron Jones is logging full practices this week, up into 2% on Aaron Jones against the Vikings. Some of these guys are just not high owned at all. And it really surprised me. Barkley at less than 1%, that's whatever at his price point. But there are some low owned guys that really stand out to me this week. And I think I want to be over the field on a couple of these guys that have slate breaking potential.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because there's guys down in the low owned area that I think are going to get steamed up. Travis Etienne, if he's going to be 5%, I'll still play him. I know he's ran really good in the touchdown department, 2 touchdowns in 3 straight, but the opportunity has been there. I do expect him to be more efficient than 3.1, 3.8 yards per carry. He's had the last 2. Getting the entire backfield. I mean, that's just so much fun there. You brought up the Derrick Henry one. I think it at least has to be noted, Atlanta is number 1 in the NFL at avoiding fantasy points to the tight end. To the running back position. They've been incredible there, but 30th strength of schedule, according to PFF. 30th out of 32 teams in the NFL, the 30th ranked schedule. They've played nobody. Carolina, Green Bay, Detroit, which, take or leave that, Jacksonville, Houston, Washington, and last week was the Bucs. I mean, come on, guys. There is definite upside there. If Brian Tannehill's not going to be out there, Will Levis and Malik Willis. I mean, we saw that at Houston game last season with Malik Willis playing alongside Derrick Henry. They just handed it off to him infinity times. It could be a lot of that again. Maybe.
No. I'm just looking at it, and I appreciate you. Is it Mateus? I ask him a million times. Tell me how to pronounce your name. Is it Mateus? Eric?
I have no idea.
Look up. It's the orange. Is it Mateus?
Yeah, Mateus Drozd.
It is Mateus, right? I ask him. I politely ask all the time. I get no response.
So nice.
But I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you hanging out with us for all these shows. No. I just, what you were talking about, it's a 13-game slate, and ownership is really flat. Kamara's 15%. The volume there is insane with how bad Derek Carr is. He's just 14 times a game.
My God.
It's nuts. Swift is 13%. I thought I was going to want to get more of him. I thought Swift would be a guy that was actually getting less ownership and I could get overweight there. But if he's going to be up there, I'll say, you know what? I'll pivot off of DeAndre Swift because the touchdown equity is still relatively tough to come by in a spot like that. I'll target that Eagles passing game, which isn't getting nearly as much ownership as I expected. Yeah, there's some spots here, man. There's some real spots here. Even Ramondre Stevenson. Remember that one? You remember that?
I do. Yeah. Old school Nick.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah. Disney Channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
6% Stevenson, 2% Damian Pierce against Carolina. I'm not saying all these guys are smash spots, but Raheem Mostert we have coming in very low in ownership right now. There's some really interesting running back plays.
You brought up Damian Pierce. I'm curious what you think. This is obviously an interesting football game because it's two not very good football teams. Houston offense has been awesome. Carolina, Adam Thielen's been awesome.
Houston defense has been good.
Yeah. Devin Singletary played a lot more last week. 12 carries, 58 yards. He's definitely going to be more of the passing game type back here. Got more snaps for the first time. I think 4,400 Devin Singletary is at least something that I'm like 0.1% kind of a deal. Obviously, that's a weird one to bring up as like the third or fourth running back we're going to talk about because, he's like large field, absolute dart. But there's a lot of those guys. Bijan Robinson, he'll be healthy this week. Now he's down to 6K. And yeah, all this Arthur Smith stuff's driving you nuts and whatever else. But like, Bijan Robinson is still really, really good at football. And I got to think that if he's healthy against the Bucs, he's probably out there quite a bit. And now we've seen a major price correction, 7,300 down to 6K this week.
Isn't that crazy?
Wild. It's
Open
wild.
The season at 8K.
Yep. Jonathan Taylor, we knew it was coming. Going to be playing more than Zach Moss going forward. That's just kind of what it is when you pay a back like that. You don't want to look foolish. And it took a week or two, but we definitely got some of that usage we were hoping for from JT. Goes up against a tough Saints spot, but like getting some involvement in the passing game here now, 10 targets in his last 2 weeks. There's just so many guys that we can shuffle through. And, for me, it's going to be a lot of like set it, forget it with the Sims tool, finding some opportunities to find some leverage and see where ownership really lies come Sunday. If there was one back you thought was going to be 20+% no matter what, who would you pick? Because I've got my guy.
That I get 20% exposure to, or that he's going to come in north of 20% ownership?
How about both?
I don't know.
Okay. Isaiah Pacheco is going to definitely be more than 20% at 6,100, right?
I don't think so.
Really? Denver, 32nd against the running back position.
Yeah, I think they're figuring things out on that defense a little bit.
Interesting.
I don't think they're top 5. I also don't think they're bottom 5. Like I've said it the past couple of weeks. I think Denver's defense is going to has been figuring some things out. I kind of equated to Cleveland last year, early in the year, where they had those massive communication issues despite having talent on the field, and they were terrible. And then they turned things around. And they've talked about communication issues in Denver. So look, not saying they're good. Don't get me wrong. Not saying they're good. I'm saying I don't think they're as bad. I don't know. Maybe they are. Who knows? But Pacheco's, I was thinking Kamara. I really thought Kamara was going to get steamed seeing that volume.
Derek Carr is so bad. I think it's
terrible.
like us saying that they got to do something eventually about it. If he can't throw the ball downfield, it's so frustrating to watch. I mean,
he throws down
targets
all the time. He just can't connect on anything.
That's what I'm getting at, is he's got to like actually hit somebody. Otherwise it becomes like he's like gun shy or something. Again, 14 targets.
And guess what? The Saints are still favored.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that might be a cold spot. Is that something that was from your Wednesday video?
Tuesday with Ben.
Okay.
Wait, what did you talk about, the Odd Shopper one?
Yeah.
I don't have a good read on this game. There's a few other games that I like a lot. This is one where I was like, that I just have a really tough time with Derek Carr, because
it's fair.
The Saints defense is good, but eventually when you're on the field for the entirety of the game, it can make things difficult,
Very much so.
I like Kamara though. I'm with you on Bijan Robinson, 13% right now. He opened the season at 8K. He's down to $6,000. It's really crazy, man. And to your point on Damian Pierce, totally agree. That is a massive risk spot to me, but also one that at his price could potentially pay off only because, and they were on a bye last week, but you're right. The week before that, 13 carries, outproduced by Singletary, but he had 24 and 20 carries in back-to-back weeks going into that game. So I think it could be a hot hand approach here. Carolina is a lifeless football team right now. 2%, not crazy. We had a question from Justin. Is Raheem Mostert healthy? He missed practice with an ankle. That happened before, and then he full practiced the next day. So I think today will be a better indicator of what we get out of Mostert. But I don't know, man. I expected him to struggle against the Eagles. I expect literally every running back to struggle against the Eagles, don't you?
Yeah, very much so.
Right? So
yep.
The question now,
yes. I mean, the thing is, like, what is the, like, what's the main, I don't even know. You go first. It's your team.
What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to bring up the fact that, like, the Eagles, I do think the Eagles are a team that you'd prefer to run on rather than try to make anything. I know that they've been very, very easy to get to, like, to be able to pass against the last couple of weeks, but as they get healthier, and then also as you start getting in some of these shootouts, I mean, the Eagles are just a fully operational Death Star, and if they're going to be running the ball and killing clock against you, the best way to go combat that is to try to get into some of these more slugfests, because you try to go out and do the high voltage Miami thing, I think you're going to get in trouble more than you're not, because the Eagles are just set up to play that kind of football to prevent the things that you want to do.
For sure. The problem is that Miami did try to run the ball a decent amount early on. They just got
Mostert had -8 yards through 3 carries or something.
Well, look at the guys that you're trying to run on.
Yeah.
Jordan Davis is 900 pounds.
I want to run through this wall just for fun.
Yeah, well, you know what it is they have a rotation of guys, like a massive. You could field two starting defensive lines with what the Eagles have. Seriously.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, do you know how tough it is when you're in offense to against every time a fresh rotational piece coming in? That's real difficult. I just want to know, are you willing, if he plays and he's healthy, are you willing as a 9.5 point favorite to pay for a 2% owned Raheem Mostert?
Probably. I mean, we're talking about like the top fantasy asset period going up against New England at home. One of those like bounce back spots where everybody forgets just how awful New England is because of last week, and Mac Jones finally playing competent football. Congratulations. No Tre'Davious White ended up working out. A lot of that short seam Kendrick Bourne stuff ended up panning out again. Rushing defense, though, 85 yards per game. That's going to change drastically here, I would think, for the New England side. That can't be correct. That has to be wrong on my sheet. Oh, there we go. That's better. 100 per game. There you go. 100.7 rushing yards per game. 13th in the NFL. 7,700. Just one of those spots where you're paying up to get different. That's for sure. But there are so many ways where you thought Jeff Wilson was going to mix in. Not the case. Not the case at all. And if he's healthy and ready to rock, maybe that changes. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw Wilson mixed in a little bit more to try to keep his workload down. But in the event that it's not, Raheem Mostert is #fast.
He is. So I don't mind him here if he's really that low owned. He's expensive. Don't get me wrong. But man, if Mostert is projected for like 2% and Kamara comes up close to 20, yeah, that's interesting to me. That's interesting because you're on a much better offense with a much higher implied total. Are there any other, like DeMercado? We have a 12% against Baltimore. That's kind of wild. I mentioned Derrick Henry. 2% Derrick Henry is it. If nothing else, guys, we got to talk about it. If nothing else, you don't have to play him, but if nothing else, he's worthy of discussion here because they're only 2.5 point dogs. Mike Vrabel home dogs have been pretty profitable over the years. Derrick Henry, if you're smart, you try to just tear apart the defensive line for Atlanta and give him as many carries as you possibly can, right? Like that's what I would think. And obviously Atlanta knows that too. I get it. But a guy that's such a monster after contact like Henry is, you got to attempt it.
Yeah, you go back to the Houston game last season, it would have been week 8, and 32 rushing attempts without Ryan Tannehill in that football game. Malik Willis completely an afterthought. And sure, Houston's defense has gotten better. And last year's version, we all know how easy they were to go run all over. And Derrick Henry, you knew the run was coming and it didn't matter. Malik Willis, he's definitely kind of that guy where you could run some option like it's, college football game day 2005. Shout out the GOAT game. But like, I legitimately think Derrick Henry might rush the football 30 times. I think this is one of those spots where, as good as Spears has looked at times, and I know there are a lot of people clamoring saying, hey, Derrick Henry should just get traded because Spears is still pretty competent. Sure, but Derrick Henry has like that unbelievable ability to just like put a team on his back. They can put 8 in the box and it's not even going to matter because what's coming and it won't matter if Derrick Henry gets going. And at 1 or 2%, you always kind of want to find out.
Agreed. And also, he can break big plays. He's not just a plotter. Like Derrick Henry can his second level speed is, every time I see it, it's actually this many years later still surprises me.
Yeah.
What do you do? I want to ask you about one more guy. Okay.
Chuba Hubbard.
What's that?
Chuba Hubbard.
No. was that your guy last week?
Well, I talked about the fact that I thought that the tide was turning, and then it did. And now all of this mucky muck where they're saying, they're first of all changing over play calling duties. I'm kind of worried about that for Thielen. Not having Frank Reich. I don't know who the offensive coordinator is who's going to be calling the plays now going forward. But Hubbard, Sanders, news that they're just going to go split it and have fun with that. Hubbard's been the more efficient back. He's been good, and it's a Houston team that's still 30th at giving up. It's just been an awesome matchup. Third highest amount of fantasy points given up to the running back position. If it's split down the middle with Sanders, you're going to feel like an idiot, but it's sub 5K. Chuba Hubbard coming off of a game where he had 19 carries and 4.6 per carry was far better than anything you've seen from Miles Sanders. And we know you're better off having Hubbard out there in the passing game in any capacity. So I am at 0.4%. Both of those backup running backs that are now potentially RB1s now on their team, I think they're both weirdly in play for large field only.
Dirty Mert, hey guys, appreciate what you do every week. Can you please briefly explain how qualifiers work? DK doesn't have clear overviews, and I have a few tickets I won that I'm unsure what to do with. Yeah, just go into the lobby, look for the qualifiers that have you'll see your ticket next to it. I assume you entered satellites or something for them or got them elsewhere. Qualifier tickets, you enter a qualifier. And then, so first place in a qualifier would qualify for, might be King of the Beach. It might be the fantasy football championship, something like that. But if you go into the lobby, you see how much they're worth. You scroll down and find them.
Yeah, you can also click on the ticket icon on your desktop and it'll pull up. I just clicked on it and I have like these NBA countdown tickets. I have these $4, NBA tickets. I have a DoorDash and Clay Matthews big game contest. I've got these random generic tickets. So you're going to see those on that screen. If you click on the visit lobby, it should direct you towards it. If it doesn't, just look for the icon on the front of the screen.
He said, so if I win a qualifier, I have to win an additional qualifier to eventually make it to the actual tournament. My assumption is you want a ticket to the qualifier through a satellite.
I mean, he might be talking King of the Beach, which is the case. Yeah. And then there's also the big game contest. Yep. Those are both, I believe, second staggered ones.
Unless you actually won several tickets to King of the Beach. In that case, well, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, dude. That's awesome. I was going to say, I usually do, because it's 5 entry. They're great. Just do like the $5 one and I stack it on top of my $33 lineup. So I can kind of like be editing those while I'm on the show for Live Before Lock. It's a good way to go about it. Just to have some kind of qualifier deals. I'm done chasing queues. I've dumped so much money into queues over the years. And I still, I've gotten 2 seconds now in the last 3 years, and I got to be done with them at this point. But the King of the Beach one, I can still justify.
It's fun. Yeah, those can become quite the money pit. I lost a lot of money chasing them years ago, like a lot of money.
Yeah, Roto Tracker taught me never again.
Yeah. Anyway, 2 guys, and we'll make this quick so we can talk wide receivers here that I want to ask you about. Jonathan Taylor, nice game, but let's not forget that him and Zach Moss still split everything down the middle last time out. Jonathan Taylor and Tony Pollard. Go for it. 13 and 17% respectively.
Yeah, JT talked a little bit about it's nice to at least just see the opportunity ramped up because we did see Zach Moss early on take on a lot of that work even after the contract. They slowly acclimated JT. They said they were going to get him more involved. Nice to have that come to fruition. Again, getting 22 opportunities, that's something that is good enough for me at 6,200 for Jonathan Taylor. We'll pay close attention to the ownership, but because he is in a split backfield where guys like Pacheco are just dominating the splits, and Tony Pollard for sure, way more expensive. But in terms of like that 6,300 Swift, 6,100 Pacheco, 6K Bijan Robinson, I could see it where Jonathan Taylor goes lower on the pecking order, even coming off of a good game last week, 21 DraftKings points. So that'll be a little bit more ownership dependent, if you will. Tony Pollard, I mean, it's not been good. I don't really know what to say because like it's more of a Dak Prescott and an overall Dallas issue, but now you're getting the Rams. It's been bad, but I still think in these competitive spots and the Charger spot, it was defense really just, I mean, they stacked it up on Dak Prescott. Just Tony Pollard had nowhere to go. I can't remember the entire offensive line situation. I feel like Dallas was down a guy or two. I can't remember here. I'd have to go back and look, but I do think that Tony Pollard is just one of those guys that you have to think that the touchdown variance is going to work back his way. To have nothing here since week one is just running bad. And you've seen Rico Dowdle kind of get mixed in where he's picked up these touchdowns at times. That's been a little bit frustrating. The passing game touchdown there in week 3 against Arizona was what stuck out to me. So you're still going to see Tony Pollard getting the majority of snaps. Deuce Vaughn, he got mixed in a little bit there in the week 4 blowout, week 5 a little bit, but then he was inactive. So I mean, if he's going to be inactive, I got to think Pollard's still going to play 85, 90% of snaps. That's all you want.
Yeah, it's volume. Their offense stinks. It doesn't function, but
other than that, it's fun.
Yeah, but you know what? They're 6.5 point favorites. It's still a good spot for Tony Pollard. It is. I understand why he's getting ownership. Not to mention, he's not egregiously priced either. I wouldn't want to pay 8,500 for Tony Pollard here, you know. But
well, I guess the big question is, what do you want to do with Matt Stafford doubles? Because I like him. I think everybody likes looking at the Rams passing game and seeing the crazy volume there. This is going to be a freaky spot against Micah Parsons and company, but like you still see Nakua and Kupp pulling ownership every single week. And then one of them has an opportunity to go absolutely nuts. This is like the first week we've had where it's been a little bit more muted because there are so many different options. I mean, you've got Kupp at 13%, Nakua coming off of a absolute nuke, 4.7%. Like, I still like Stafford doubles if it's going to be super cheap like that. Stafford's still gettable with at least one, maybe two of those guys. And then, you know, Lamb or Pollard as your run back, I guess, is kind of the main question. Jake Ferguson, perhaps, if you need the salary.
I don't think I'll have any Stafford doubles with those guys. The price is insane.
It's gotten up there. They're just getting all the volume, though. It's like 80% of the volume or 70% of the volume on their team. It's absurd.
I know. It's just a 13-game slate. And now I'm paying almost $17,000 between two receivers on the same team.
Against a good defense.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk wide receivers. Before we do, guys, Prize Picks, if you're not there yet, we got a pretty decent reason to sign up, assuming Prize Picks is legal in your state. Not only do you get a first match deposit bonus of $100, which is awesome, meaning if you put 100 in, you now have 200 in your account. You put 50 in, you now have 100. You put 20, even 20 in, 25, you got 40 or 50, doubles it out of the gate. You also get an entirely free month of all of our oddshopper.com premium subscription, which includes Prize Picks cards and the Prize Picks lineup builder, all of the plus EV Prize Picks plays for all the sports every single day. That is 100% free. So 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100. They just double it. It's not a drip. It goes straight in. You can play it immediately. And the free month of all of our stuff to help you win at Prize Picks, which you otherwise would have had to pay for. Link to that's in the description and in the chat. I must ask you, though, before we move on to wide receivers, do you have anything for today, for this week, Maybe basketball. Have you looked at any prize pick spots yet that are worth hitting?
Yeah, there was one last night that ended up getting taken off the board right away. I got in on Anthony Davis over 1-3. That was sitting like, again, you're comparing it to around the industry, if you will, sitting there -140, -145. That was a nifty one. Haven't started my prop research here yet for the NBA streets. Everything is very dependent tonight on what the status was going to be. I guess they just kind of got released and it updated in my sheet, but I am very nervous about what is going to happen here on the Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic side of things, playing a Lakers team that's obviously fully operational. No Beal, he's doubtful. No Devin Booker, he's doubtful. I am kind of at a loss for that one, but NFL wise, I'm curious if you like this one tonight. Josh Allen over 22.5 rushing yards. They have to get him going. They have to start allowing him to run the football because he is starting to show a lot of blemishes here. He has not hit the over of that number here in his last 4 outings, but it just seems like this offense staggers at times against of all teams. New England last week, Tampa Bay. Yeah, you're not going to be able to just go out and run the football down their throat with James Cook, I don't think. But I think Josh Allen, just in some scramble situations, they have to start getting him involved in the rushing game sooner rather than later if they want their offense to get back to what it was 2 years ago.
I think you're probably on the right page there. The only thing I hate is that this Bills or Buccaneers defense is uniquely equipped to limit rushing upside from opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's very true, but
they have those type of weapons that can really limit rushing upside to opposing. They've allowed 90 rushing yards on the season to quarterbacks, but Josh Allen's very good. So,
Josh Allen is very good. And again, this feels like a desperate times call for desperate measures kind of a deal.
I agree. They
got to get going.
Plus their defense is so banged up at this point that it feels like they're just going to win in shootouts at this stage of the game. So yeah, you're going to need something from Josh Allen for sure. Anyway, guys, link in the description, link in the chat. 100% first match deposit bonus. You're just building lineups with player props, overs and unders. You're 10xing if you hit 5x. You still make money back if you hit 4 or 3x. 6 if you go 6 pick flex play, 25x. 25x if you hit. Still can make money back on 5 and 4. Like I said, mix as many sports into as many lineups as you want. I know, Eric, you're a big time prize picks guy because you don't have anything else in the state of California, man.
You got to do the prize picks all the time. It's fantastic. Luckily, get to go to Arizona quite frequently. Got some good stuff there. Going to be at the basketball game tonight. It's going to be awesome. But prize picks, underdog, all of these pick'em sites, they are phenomenal. And I think prize picks, just the industry standard, if you will, being able to put cards together, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you can go up to 20x your money. It's just, there are so many edges that you can have over there. I'm going to be posting more and more and more over at Prize Picks. And if you guys want to tail along, you can follow me at Eric Lindquist. I'm going to be firing up a lot of goodness there.
There you go. Wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, very popular. I mean, is it really that surprising? It's not. I just can't stop looking at 3% Jalen Waddle, though, man. Assuming he's okay with that back, I can't stop looking at 3% Jalen Waddle and 1% Devontae Smith. Now, let me be very clear here. I still like Antonio Brown a lot. 125 plus receiving yards in 5 straight games. This guy, I know it's
Antonio Brown.
I meant AJ Brown. Did I say Antonio Brown?
Yeah, AJ Brown, he's running around, but he's doing something different with 125.
Yeah. Big fan of Antonio Brown, the person, not so much the player. Just kidding. Norm Macdonald would use that about like bad people, you know. He'd be like, he's like, Bill Cosby, I love the person, not so much his comedy. And when he'd have guests on his podcast and they'd be like, what? RIP, man, the best.
He was the expert troll.
The best. And then all the people that get offended by that type of stuff when he died were like, he was so great. I wanted to tell him to shut up. Same with the people that get offended by, certain words. And then DMX died and they're like, oh, he was the best. Go listen to some DMX. Tell me if you still feel that way. after listening to DMX. It's so funny though, because they want to latch on to the newest thing that's happening. Whatever. My point is, AJ Brown, thank you for the correction, Eric.
No,
AJ Brown in a great spot, but so is Devonta Smith. The Washington Commanders cannot stop the deep ball. They can't prevent big plays. There were 5 different guys that had a 20-plus yard reception last week for the Giants. Not for the Eagles, for the Giants. There were 5 different players with 20-plus yard receptions, all right? Desmond Ridder dropped 300-plus yards on the Commanders. They cough up so many huge passing plays that I can't stop looking at this Philadelphia Eagles passing offense. Earlier this season, overtime game, A.J. Brown, 9 for 175 and 2 touchdowns. One of these guys, I can't tell you who it's going to be. By the way, Devonta Smith in that same game had 7 on 9 targets for 78. Nothing huge.
Yeah.
One of these guys is going to have a game, unless Washington somehow figured out how to patch this up in the last 7 days. But it feels like they've just been putting Band-Aids on bullet wounds at this point. I'm going to go back to picking on them with this Philadelphia passing game.
Yeah, A.J. Brown, it starts with him, though, 48.2% air yard share. I mean, that's the highest in the NFL on any team, period, amongst
What's
his teams.
Smith at on the same team?
On the same team is, let me update that. He
Just
is at 32.1%. So, I mean, they are getting all of the targets. And
right.
Devonta Smith still has a 22% target share. It's just that he's got a 13.38 out. That's not so bad. No yards after the catch, really. Basically just getting hit immediately. But A.J. Brown, I mean, this is just absurd. I'm with you where I think Devonta Smith, there are going to be some games here coming out soon. I know people are talking about, oh, well, his production not getting looked at as much, yada, yada, yada. It's like, well, the 11 targets against the Jets, that's inflating it maybe a little bit, 10 that he had against New England, but still, he's over a 20% target share in the Eagles offense against the Commanders. That is good enough for me. Again, 30-ish% air yard share. That's nifty as well. Those two together, that is going to be a lot of fun kind of figuring that one out. I think Goddard's going to have to come along for the ride in a lot of those lineups. Going to be hard to just straight out double Brown and Smith, but I guess 8K 6,700, it's far more doable than even like Nacua and Kupp, who I talked about earlier. So I'm with you. Devonta Smith, he's going to have that game. And just knowing that it can come from just about anybody. I mean, you're not looking at Julio Jones or Zacchaeus at this point in time, but Goddard, Smith, and Mr. A.J. Brown, God himself, they're in a phenomenal spot.
Jack Off said, love the name, by the way. I love you, Laffy, but your Homer Simpson mask is huge today. Dude, can you imagine being a fan of a team that has a really good offense and taking this crap from you guys in chat every time I say they're good plays? Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just like how I feel every time with Kirk Cousins in primetime, because the last time he played in primetime, he was awesome, friends.
He looked good, man. He looked good.
Yeah. Just good enough for us to not get a top 10 pick. Perfect.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I said, though, probably get away from Swift here, although I think he's fine. But no, the truth is, and I know you're trolling, Jackoff. I can appreciate that because you need to get a rise out of me. The truth is that essentially any semi-competent passing offense that faces Washington, until they fix it, if they do, they're going to be squarely in play. Isn't that fair to say at this point? Any team that faces Washington that is not just outright awful at throwing the football, and even maybe if they are, deserves attention.
Atlanta was terrible at throwing the football, and they won you $1 million. You called that one. So
I didn't win $1 million.
But somebody did because of Atlanta.
Yeah, right. I know. Top 3. Anyway, what are you doing with the other top or highest owned receivers? Because there's a lot of them this week that are pulling, 10% plus, 13+%. Your boy Addison's up there. Zay Flowers again is up there. Jamar Chase at 16%. That was a little surprising to me. I prefer AJ Brown at lesser ownership.
I gotta say, I will not be a homer like Laffy over there, who is obviously extremely biased. I think Jordan Addison, it's really tough for me to see 5,700 against Green Bay, Jair Alexander, and think that I want to in some way, shape, or form play and click on his name coming off of that San Francisco primetime game. One, he gets the primetime bump. You have to basically artificially increase ownership to account for that. But the big thing for me is this touchdown run is accounting for so much of his PPR scoring, his DraftKings scoring. 4 touchdowns the last 3 weeks. KC, Chicago, 2 against Francisco. Yeah, he's getting targeted at a great clip. He's so good. 24 targets here. But I got to say, even as the number one, it's one of those spots where I just don't think I can go all that crazy here. TJ Hawkinson didn't practice. This could be a fully, could just be a problem here going into Lambeau Field. I know Green Bay hasn't been good by any means, but divisional rival and Jordan Addison running so well with touchdowns that you got to expect some kind of negative regression there. The Tyreek Hill thing, I can't even really touch on because we'll need to see the practice report. I think Waddle will be one of the most popular plays of the slate in the event that you don't have Tyreek Hill out there running routes. We kind of have to consider everything, even a Durham Smythe, who's now back-to-back weeks ran tons of routes and has not been targeted once, would actually be somebody I would think about playing football as well. But those are kind of like your main chalky guys. For me, I want to ask you, though, Jamar Chase, coming off of San Francisco just getting lit up there, they are getting torched by wide receivers this season. Not something that any of us expected coming in. 8,100 for him. He would be the guy I would just jam at the top if ownership were to stay the same.
I prefer A.J. Brown.
You do? Okay. That's going to be a huge 1v1 for everybody.
For sure. 6% difference right now. I have no problem with Chase. I don't. But I don't know. I mean,
play them both. Fuck it.
AJ, you could. You really could. You absolutely could do that. By the way, to your point about Green Bay, Jair Alexander returned to practice, but they lost Stokes. They lost Savage to the IR. They're down 2 starting guys in the secondary. Jair Alexander back. I assume he plays, but that could be a problem.
KJ Osborne is not good.
What's that?
KJ Osborne. I mean, who else is going to take advantage of it? We're going to have, TJ Hawkinson, if he's going to be dinged up, I really hope that he practices here today because I do not want to see Josh Oliver and Johnny Munt out there running routes ever.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do not blame you at all. All right.
We're going to be 3 and 5, and I'm going to want to vomit.
Jordan, you said ownership updated again? Let me see here.
Refresh it here.
How much different are we looking? Let's see. Wide receiver.
Yeah. 8 hours ago, I still have is the last
I got
refresh.
46 minutes ago.
Oh, there you go.
If you're on main slate ownership.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Yep.
Yeah, now Chase and Brown are 8% different. 18% Chase, 10% Brown. Well, 10.9%. So, yeah. Cooper Kupp is still up there. Boy, he's expensive. Between him and Tyreek Hill, do you have a preference?
I mean, Tyreek Hill probably going up against New England there. Cooper Kupp, he's going to have some of those ridiculous games, but there's no doubt Nakua. We were so worried about what was going to happen to Nakua after Kupp came out of the gate and went ballistic and played pretty much that entire game against Philadelphia. It's kind of been the inverse where Nakua now is affecting what we might have been expecting for Kupp. They're both getting tons of opportunity, but like Tyreek Hill has such a dominant target share over Jalen Waddle that it's hard not to prefer him. Even if you have the 500, that's, I guess, the big question.
What about like a 13% Adam Thielen? He's 6,600 now. That price is coming up. And also talk to me now that we have ownership, because we didn't on Tuesday for the first look show. That's just like a lay the foundation type spot. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens both getting some ownership against the Jaguars.
Going through Adam Thielen's box score, let's go through his salaries that he's been at. 4K in week 2, put up 20.4 in DK scoring. 3,900 week 3, 34.5, 4,500, 15.2, 5,100, 30.7, 5,900, 31.5. My big thing is that he is now 6,600, and there is a big shift, I would assume, in some kind of play calling duties. Like, why are we changing up anything for Adam Thielen? That just gets me a little bit worried. I think it's something to keep on high alert because Adam Thielen, I thought he was going to end up being popular last late. That did not happen at all. I'm going to hashtag trust the process, trust the ownership that we have here at Stokastic, because at 13%, I would be over it at 6,600 and just take my guesses there or take my lumps. But something tells me again, this is the week. This is the week against Houston that he ends up getting steamed up. You'd be buying at a high tag and in a spot where You have some unknowns. I do think there's some unknowns going from right to anybody else. You just don't want things to change as an Adam Thielen backer.
He's been on the main slate. So he wasn't on the main slate in week 2, but he's been on the main slate week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. He was in the winning Millie lineup 3 times out of 4. And the only time he wasn't, he was in the second place lineup. You guys do with that what you will.
You asked about Thielen, right? I was listening to you, correct?
Yeah. I was saying Thielen, and then let's talk about Pickens and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Deontay Johnson, same tag as last week, and we saw him pretty darn healthy. It was good to see him out there running routes and being effective, and he learned how to catch again. That's always exciting to see Deontay Johnson catch the football because he is so good at everything else.
So now we can look at some cheaper options. I'm sorry, lesser owned options. At some point, right? There has to be that big game from Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith, right? There has to be high flying offenses. Eagles love to air the ball out in a good spot. Jalen Waddle was limited. We'll see what's going on with that back. He was in and out of that game last Sunday against the Eagles. The difference here is that for some reason, Devontae Smith price point has come down, which it should, by the way. But Devontae Smith's price has come down. Jalen Waddle's hardly budging. That's the difference for me. I don't see a huge difference in these two players. They both have an elite alpha in Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown. They both have quarterbacks that can get them the ball, but they both, target share is lower. Devontae Smith, and you mentioned this earlier, still has a nice air yard share, still has a 22% target share, second highest on the team. He's down to 6,700 against this Washington team. We have him at 1.6% ownership right now. I may just say, if I'm wrong on this, I'll eat it and I'll accept it. I'll accept all responsibility. But if Devontae Smith gets no ownership at all in this particular spot, I know he's had some drops, but that just feels like eventually, and this is the matchup where eventually you see the monster nuclear Devontae Smith game.
I'm very much with you. And we had a pretty nuclear Devonta Smith game earlier this season. It's not like it's something that is completely unknown. 26.1 that you had week 2 against my Minnesota Vikings. That definitely, he was the guy who stood out to me on the field that day, but I digress. I was also surrounded by Eagles fans and hated my life that day, but I am looking at Devonta Smith at that ownership. I think it sticks out like a sore thumb, gives you leverage. Well, not leverage technically, but it definitely is a pivot off of an Adam Thielen here that makes a lot of sense. You just basically 1-for-1 that, and you're different no matter what. I think the rest of the range is kind of icky in the 6K range. You have a 7K Brandon Ayuk, and I will say, going through some of his numbers, I was surprised at what we had from him. 47.6% air yard share. That only trails A.J. Brown in the entire NFL. 29.4% target share, 14.18 odd to go with it here. I think we could expect some better outcomes from him, considering A.J. Brown has 151 PPR points and Brandon Ayuk sitting at 93. So 7K, maybe I could get a little bit different, but looking around the industry, he's really popular in some places. So I don't think it's going to go completely overlooked. We've got him at 7.6%. Against Cincinnati secondary. Cincinnati, if I'm going to be playing some Jamar Chase, I like kind of the combination of him and Ayuk and getting away from everything. The huge unknown is obviously the fact that you're going to be switching quarterbacks more than likely. Brock Purdy in concussion protocol, and now does Sam Darnold continue to? He looked decent enough in the preseason. He's pulling 8.3% ownership as I look at it in terms of putting that stack together with a cheaper Darnold, him, Christian McCaffrey. I think that might be something that people put together quite a bit. I don't know. It feels like the rest, though, right underneath that 6K range is just disgusting outside of Thielen.
Oh, it gets ugly fast for sure. But there's a few other low-owned guys I don't hate. Garrett Wilson's not terrible at 4%. I don't love it, though. Rashid Shaheed's coming in sub 2%. I actually like how they're using him. It sucks that you have Kamara and Thomas and Olave and everything, but I don't hate how they're for a sub $4,000 guy. I don't hate Rashid Shaheed. He will get some deep balls. Whether or not they can connect is another story. Would you play any Brandon Powell at 2%? He's getting some opportunities.
I mean, he's getting some opportunities. If you have no Hawkinson, I'll probably have to buy in a little bit because you're not going to have Oliver and Munn out there playing 12. We love to play 12, and I doubt we're going to be able to.
He had an end zone target last game, too.
He did, and he's going to be on the field in 3 wide receiver sets. The thing is, we don't have a ton of them, and now we've had to incorporate them more because of injuries. No Justin Jefferson. We weren't getting a lot of productivity, anything else outside of Hawkinson there at the tight end position. So I could see Powell mixing in a little bit more, and we have to kind of do some things differently in the event that there's no Hawkinson. But again, he's questionable right now. It's so hard to kind of theorize what that's going to be. He's cheap enough at 3,200. You could probably take a couple of darts as is. I think I don't know how to like compare him to KJ Osborne because KJ Osborne's on the field all the time, but I mean, not really getting the targets you would be looking for a guy who's on the field all the time. So Brandon Powell, don't completely hate that shout out.
Any other low owned plays that stick out before we talk tight ends here?
Jonathan Mingo is somebody that I think is going to get mixed in a little bit more here. Rookies, as they go along, get more comfortable in an offense, and there's a change in play caller. You could see a philosophy where it gets spread out a little bit more. That Houston game is one that I definitely have interest in CJ Stroud and some of the Houston pieces. They are getting Tank Dell back off after the bye. I think Jonathan Mingo at 3,400 is somebody that I was at least entertaining last night looking through this slate. I think Michael Wilson as well. He kind of falls into that category of a young receiver going up against Baltimore here, 3,600, kind of the last hurrah before Kyler Murray shows up either next week or potentially 2 weeks from now. I think he's at least a piece that we've seen that kind of upside from him. He had 26.6 against San Francisco. San Francisco's secondary doesn't look as good in hindsight based on what we've seen in previous weeks, but I still think he's a talented enough. He's really the only big enough wide receiver there on Arizona side that can win in some of those matchups. And if they're not going to have Rondale Moore out there, who should still be out there more than what he is and getting more opportunities, Michael Wilson, I think, is just going to grow in terms of opportunities going forward.
I have 2 players. One of them, it is gross, admittedly.
Okay.
Ben was not a fan, and I understand it. I do, Ben. Chris Olave. Tell you why.
Ugh.
I know it's gross, right? But sometimes I'm a sucker for just the targets. And no player has been targeted more on deep balls in the entire league than Chris Olave this season. Not a single player has more targets 20-plus yards downfield than Chris Olave. 19 of them on the year. That's a lot for 7 games. Now, here's the problem. 16 receivers have more deep ball receptions than Chris Olave. So that should tell you all you need to know. He has 4 receptions on 19 deep targets. I mean, as bad as Derek Carr is, eventually, these massive target games, there has to be something. You know, he's getting the targets in the end zone. We saw that last game. We know that the Indianapolis Colts defense, particularly the secondary, is not exactly strong. We know they have some injuries.
15.1 ADOT. I'm working through it in my brain a little bit. 40.3% air yard share as well to go with it. 26.4% of the targets. Obviously, that's going to look weird next to Kamara. But yeah, 10 and 15 targets the last 2 weeks. It's been ineffective, but at least that ADOT is up there at a place where if those start to connect, you're looking at a lower owned piece that could absolutely smash. The Colts have been playing in some of these shootout situations, some of it forced by some of the inadequacies they've had getting used to Gardner Minshew. I still think that's going to be better for their passing game, but it's also just adding to some shootouts that we had with the Cleveland defense going nuts. New Orleans decent enough defense that it's not a game that I'm going crazy for here. But Chris Olave, I probably like it more than Ben does now working through it.
Just because of the opportunity, right? It's right. That's what it comes down to. Like if you're getting 4 deep targets a game in some of these spots, I'll sprinkle at 5% ownership.
Well, also one thing that really is, I think the hardest part about projecting the NFL, and which is why I kind of like rely on our tools and I try not to go completely crazy with it. I'm a little bit more manual when it comes to the NBA because of the predictability, but sometimes when you see a game like we saw in primetime and you saw Alvin Kamara getting dumped off to, and we all made fun of the offense and we all sat around and said, what are they doing? Don't you change something up? Don't you try to get other pieces involved and do things a little bit differently? There's got to be some kind of a corrective mentality that they have for what Derek Carr's been doing. And I think that your number one needs to be Chris Olave in that passing game. That's how you're going to find success as an offense. Alvin Kamara can run the football. You can mix in Jamal Williams he's barely playing football right now, but definitely think that Olave, that's kind of the key to the castle and being able to unlock some kind of potential there, because Michael Thomas hasn't really had it so far. I mean, I'm not going to be trying to make him a thing, pulling actually quite a bit of ownership there, but been pretty inefficient with some of his targets as well on a shorter ADOT. But I am very much, I'm talking myself into some Olave with you, because I'll always find a run back from my Michael Pittman love.
Yeah, why not? Right. One more guy.
Josh Downs love now. My God.
Yeah. How about that ownership? Right. I mean, that's the thing though. That matchup against New Orleans isn't exactly great. And this is I don't know. One more guy, and we'll get to tight ends here. Nico Collins at 6%. I know Tank.
Love my favorite wide receiver on the board at 5,500.
Me too. I know Tank Dell has returned. I know they're getting healthy, but this spot, man, Nico Collins could go crazy. He could. I think 6% Nico Collins at what would you say, 5,500?
Yep.
Pretty crazy price point, in my opinion.
Yeah, getting Tank Dell back, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing, because it's kind of like, I know it'll probably take away a little bit of the luster on the top end for some people, where it's like, oh, well, I can't play with Tank Dell back. Well, the offense should function even better than it did in his absence. I mean, 2013, 21-19, 36 was actually an absolute whooping, and that was all Nico Collins with the 7 for 168 and 2 touchdowns. But the last 2 weeks, it's been a little bit stagnant for them. It hasn't been as seamless as what it was to begin the season. And now you get Tank Dell back into the picture there. I'm kind of encouraged with the opportunity Nico Collins has here. 5,500. Robert Woods still dinged up. He didn't practice Wednesday, so that's another thing to be paying attention to. But there's really nobody else that they want to be mixing in there for snaps. I mean, John Mechie's barely seen the field. Noah Brown exists. He ended up being on the field more there in that week 6 spot, but Nico Collins, 5,500 against Carolina, who is second worst against the wide receiver position, giving up gobs of fantasy goodness. Yeah, that makes tons of sense, Laffy.
I'm with you, man. I like it.
Let's party.
Get the tight ends here. By the way, appreciate all you guys hanging out with us. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. All of this, much, greatly appreciated. And, if you join late, just a reminder, all of our NBA packages, 20% off for the first week. It's an awesome deal. And this includes like the Sims package, the Sims Max package, the best package we have that is all of our tools. The basic Sims package, 20% off, or just the lineup generator, 20% off. I know we're doing an NFL show, but we're all going to be playing basketball on all of those days. So make it worthwhile. Get in, take that discount. And of course, all of our NFL tools down there in the description as well. If you wanted the NFL lineup generator or the Sims tool, which we talk so frequently about here on the show. Travis Kelce, Hawkinson, my boy McBride. The overs all hit for me on McBride last week, but he didn't help me much from a fantasy standpoint. Even before Ertz got hurt, though, McBride was the primary tight end target in that offense. But 14% now, with Ertz on the IR, kind of whatever for me.
Yeah, especially against Baltimore. He's 2,800. That's got to be the pushback at least there, where,
for sure.
I mean, he's so cheap and he makes so much work. And Connor Hayward was somebody that I played quite a bit last week in the absence, 2,600. He's like your path to getting different, your path to punting. And, there were a lot of two tight end lineups that I was putting together because I played all the Kelce and all the land. But I think Trey McBride, the price alone, knowing that there's no Zach Ertz there, and then you have Jeff Swaim, who we've seen going back to his Tennessee days. He's not going to run a lot of routes. He's not going to be all that involved here if it ends up being him sharing the field with Trey McBride in any kind of 12. And it makes all the sense to me that Trey McBride would be pulling this kind of ownership. It could get steamed up even further. The nice savior we have here is that you do have the super ceiling of Kelce on this slate.
Yes, you do. What about a 5% Dallas Goedert?
Love.
Yeah.
I mean, you've laid out all the amazing reasons that we should be looking the way of basically every single Eagle. The one thing I would say as far as pushback goes is there's been a lot of like design swings that he's ended up taking to the house last week for sure, where that was a lot of like after the catch stuff that showed up. 175 of his 324 yards have come after the catch. Wild to see.
Look at last year on that too. Everything. Look at last year for him. Everything he does is after the catch. I think you're making a very valid point here.
It's just one of those things where I think from an air yards perspective, as I'm like thinking about how you attack Washington down the field, he's going to have to do so much after the catch. I do prefer going to Smith. I do prefer going to Brown, but Dallas Goedert salary wise makes it work for some of those doubles that you're going to want to have some exposure to. I think, he would be somebody I'm not going to overthink it, play the best plays. And he's definitely somebody at that price point that makes sense. But I probably prefer a 4,500 Evan Ingram, even though he's a little bit more chalky.
I would say of the pass catchers for Philly, this would probably be my least favorite because of how often, first of all, he's awesome after the catch. Don't get me wrong.
Jackrabbits, baby.
Goddard finished third in yards after the catch at tight end last year, and he played 12 games.
Is that good?
Yeah, 7.8 yards after catch per reception.
Only a 6.5 ADOT. I had to look that up here too because I had the other stuff kind of locked and loaded. But yeah, after the catch, to have more than double your yards after the catch at the tight end position is kind of impressive. Not that it's that surprising. It's a lot of short yardage. You get matched up. The whole idea of a tight end going to the middle of the field, you're trying to line them up against linebackers, against safeties, trying to get away from the secondary because you can't run with some of those guys. But like Dallas Goedert, it's like behind the line of scrimmage from time to time, like swing passes out to the left. Yeah. And then he just bulldozed dudes last week for that touchdown. So
and they have super agile offensive linemen too. They can block 6.1 ADOT last year.
Unreal.
Sure. Yeah, I know, man. It's crazy. Yeah. It was crazy. I talked about that so much last year, which is why when you brought this up, I was like, I see where he's going with this, and it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Like the guy behind the tree.
Yeah. By the way, I still think Goddard's perfectly fine at 5%. But
I didn't say that he isn't. Hopefully that wasn't the take.
We agree he'd be third in line in the passing game, not first or second. That's what
there we go. Yeah, and I mean we have top stack very, very early, but 12.4% top stack percentage, second highest on the slate behind Miami. That is good stuff.
I don't mind going back to Mark Andrews. The only thing I hate is that the price point has come up considerably.
I just don't think they're going to need to utilize him as much.
It might not need to.
I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. I definitely think the biggest mistake I made last week, I ended up winning the Rainmakers contest in the core. And you're basically just playing the cards that you have. And it was a Baltimore where it was the Lamar Jackson with Mark Andrews, Jahmyr Gibbs with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then I bought a Kelsey to fill in because I realized the person ahead of me definitely had to have a wide receiver because they had him in the wide receiver spot. And so I figured that they had the card that I did have in Keenan Allen. So made a good pivot there. But like, I made a mistake by not playing Lamar Jackson last week. I don't want to try to be chasing that one here in this spot. Completely different matchup. Going into Arizona, this matchup specifically, they're going to be able to get anything they want to on the ground. And I think with Harbaugh, we've seen time and time again that they'll just kind of lean on the running game in some of these spots and play defensive football and kind of do the things that we saw last week against Arizona and Seattle, where it just doesn't lead to that appealing of a football game on the Baltimore side of things.
I know Cincinnati's pass defense has been strong, but they actually have allowed 4 touchdowns to tight ends on the year. Again, this is not a defense that I take lightly, but George Kittle with Debo already out at 5,400. Mm-hmm. I will do that without hesitation. He's risky. He's volatile. I know that. He's a good blocker, which kind of sucks sometimes. 98 and 96% of snaps played over the last 2 games, $5,400. I think I would like a little bit of George Kittle in my life this week.
I'm okay with that. Not my I mean, George Kittle, we look at like the distribution. You look at the bell curve on a George Kittle, and it is so extreme on both ends. You've had now 4 games of 6 PPR points or less, 2 of 2 or less. But then you have these outlier spots, 16, 13, 27.7, and you're not getting any kind of a price discount at 5,400. I sickly I would prefer Darren Waller if Darren Waller is good to go here. It's nice to see some of the rapport he's had with Tyrod Taylor and with, I mean, Daniel Jones coming back into the mix. I don't know what to completely make of it. We'll kind of cover that one, I guess, in the stacks at the very tail end of it. Sounds as though he's going to get cleared before Sunday, but that's not positive. Tyrod Taylor's been serviceable there. I think I prefer Darren Waller there if he's going to be pulling what comparable ownership once it gets to the flip. But George Kittle, I'm never going to talk against his ceiling because his ceiling is definitely there.
Well, the thing for me is a lot more specific than that. Deebo Samuel's already out.
Right.
Kittle had a 24% target share last game without Deebo. And then without Ayuk in week 3, right? Week 3, I think Ayuk missed.
Yep.
He had a 9-target game without Ayuk. And granted, they're different players, but they're both featured in this offense. Let's see. What was his target share in week 3? 27%.
Nifty.
So, 13 and 16 fantasy points in those 2 games. And mind you, both of them, he didn't find the end zone. I think whenever you get George Kittle without an Ayuk or without a Deebo, he just makes a lot of sense. That's where I'm going here.
I like that. Okay, that rationale makes sense to me here as well. I'm with you. Where again, you're getting the ceiling there still at 5,400. It's just like I do think when you are just going straight through what I expect targets, projecting out targets for these guys, there are so many dudes cheaper than him that I just it's going to be hard for me to out project them. Like even a Trey McBride, I know it's disgusting. Again, 2,800, and how we feel about that is whatever, but 5 and 6 targets now the last 2. And then you remove Ertz from the equation. Why he was playing last week, I don't really know. You might want to get something for him, but Trey McBride, I think, is going to be somebody that gets somewhat close to the same target. You can say that about a lot of guys. So it's also a much better offense in San Francisco. It's also a much more proven football player than Trey McBride, but just kind of playing devil's advocate. But he's low owned right now too, Kittle. So it's a pretty easy click now in hindsight.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to one of Deebo or Ayuk out, and we know that Deebo's out. So that's what it is for me. He could have 2 touchdowns. You never know. Or he could do nothing. Anyway, you ready to hit on our top stacks? This is how I'm going to do it today. So I'm going to ask you what your favorite stack is, what your favorite low-owned stack is. They cannot be the same. Okay. And what your preferred fade stack is. Now, it doesn't mean you might not have them.
Got it.
But it means that you're probably going to have less than the field.
I am in love with Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase. I think Cincinnati, I'll put them as my preferred stack. They're 4th in the top stack percentage. San Francisco just having issues with wide receivers, and specifically with alpha wide receivers like Jordan Addison. It's great stuff.
So you're saying which one? Joe Burrow and Chase?
Joe Burrow to Chase. I'll put Higgins with it for the time being, but more than likely I'll probably get into some singles and find some different ways of stacking it up. As disgusting as it is to say out loud, might click on Irv Smith's face once or twice, but you could even put Joe Mixon along for the ride against San Francisco. Again, it's not a fun situation to be playing currently the chalkiest running back there in Joe Mixon, but the Cincinnati stack in general is one that I think is going to, just as I look at the board, is going underutilized. So I will put them, considering they're 4th in our top stacks percentage, that one's going to be there. And then you said low owned stack.
Well, here, we'll switch off.
Okay.
I'll go Philly.
You love that.
Until Washington figures things out, I'm just going to continue to try and hone in on the passing game against them. Doesn't really matter who it is at this point. Yeah, I was a little gun shy on the Giants last week. Please forgive me. But aside from that, yeah. And you know what? I'm going to try and get overweight on Devontae Smith in those lineups.
Love it.
All right. So your favorite low owned stack? projected, expected low owned stat.
Yeah, looking at the board, what did we finish up with Houston at? Because I'm just in love with CJ Stroud. We're pretty low ownership, or at least low enough ownership for me, where I'm going to be firing that one up 5.4%. Not that the quarterback's going to take a lot. We went through all the Nico Collins talk. He also gets back your boy Tank Dell, 4,900. And this guy, when healthy, has done some electric things and opened up this offense. That's probably the easiest low-owned double to put together. You can play all of the studs you want to with it. 5,500 Collins, 4,900 Dell, CJ Stroud sitting at a grand total of 6,300. That is a cheap stack with upside against Carolina.
Yeah, I like that. God, I might just get gross and say Saints.
It's better than Pittsburgh. If you had said Pittsburgh,
no, it's tough. Pittsburgh's popular. Like the receivers are popular right now. It's not lost on me that Derek Carr is not good. I'm well aware, but he just throws so much and so often downfield that maybe one of these weeks it just happens to come together. You know what I mean? Like maybe one of these weeks, the blind squirrel finds himself a nut in Indianapolis, and it's a dome game, right? It's a dome game.
Mm-hmm.
Colts defense has given up some big passing performances. This isn't like a flag plant spot for me, but if we're talking about a low owned spot, yeah, I think you have a really cheap Rashid Shaheed. You have a cheap Michael Thomas. You have a very low owned Chris Olave. You can throw Alvin Kamara in there if you want. I really don't hate it. I really don't hate it.
I'm here for it. I the Olave thing, talking through it makes way more sense to me now as I'm kind of seeing it. What happens sometimes on these shows is you kind of prep and you have the things that you have in mind that you're going to focus on. And then somebody says something that it's like, what did I miss? And Chris Olave was kind of a miss for me for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Maybe you were right. And maybe I just steered you in the wrong direction. But
he was hurt 2 weeks ago. Remember that too. Like against New England, he was dinged up. People were wondering if he was going to play before that football game started week 5. Week 6 looked a little bit better. And now 15 targets. First time that he's like healthier there in a spot where they're going to be on the road in Indy. Yeah, Chris Olave in a dome. That seems fun. He plays a dome half the time anyway.
Give me one stack that you think you're getting away from that probably gets ownership.
Lamar Jackson. It's so sad because I missed out last week, but don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. And for me, I missed the boat on Lamar Jackson, but I can't chase it. I think him to Andrews ends up getting steamed up quite a bit here coming off of last week's nuke. You got Zay Flowers pulling 15.9% ownership against Arizona. I just don't think they're going to need to do it. Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, not going to go out of my way to roster them by any means, but I do think that they rely a lot on the ground game and just kind of play positional football against an Arizona team that doesn't have a whole lot to bring to the table.
I can appreciate that.
Watch them put up 42 nothing. That'll be fun.
Oh, and by the way, we should have pointed out, and maybe you did, and I just missed it, that Sam Darnold is likely starting this week.
Yeah, I pointed that out.
Did you? I missed it.
Yeah, Brock Purdy and concussion protocol.
Yeah.
And that's never a good thing when it happens in the middle of the week. Like Wednesday that showed up, and yeah, Sam Darnold talked about him changing quarterback.
Okay.
Looked good in the preseason, and he's pulling ownership right now too, by the way.
I was going to say, I truly don't care if it's Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold.
System quarterback.
Well,
I hate that term so much.
Me too. But I think Sam Darnold's fine is what I mean.
Right.
I think Sam Darnold's fine on a team that actually knows how to run an offense.
And has still, without Deebo Samuel, amazing skill position players.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're leaning on Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle, throw the ball near him, he's going to make the catch, right? You know, all of those guys. And Kittle's amazing after the catch.
Ayuk's been insane this year.
Yeah. I'm going to go Dallas as the one I'm getting away from.
Yep.
I like Tony Pollard. You brought up some great points on Pollard earlier in the show, and I'm with you there. But I just still have very little faith in this passing game. And with that in mind, you still have to figure out outside of CeeDee Lamb if it's going to be Ferguson or Brandon Cooks or Michael Gallup. The advantage here is that they're all cheap outside of Lamb. I get that. But I think that's probably the spot I get away from would be Dallas. Dak Prescott getting third highest quarterback ownership on the slate right now.
Yeah, they've played a lot of road games for what it's worth. They've only played twice there at home. Not that they had to do much. They absolutely destroyed New England and the Jets. Pretty easy draws for both of those. Getting the Rams, this will be pretty pass happy, above expectation, perhaps. I don't really know, but yeah, I'm with you. I saved that one for you to allow you to Hulk slam that one down. It's CeeDee Lamb is one of those guys that we didn't talk about at the wide receiver position, though. That is direct leverage off of Tony Pollard. If we can see a popular Tony Pollard, hopefully Lamb stays under 10%, that'll be an easy click.
You guys are the best, man. Appreciate you hanging out as always. Jordan said this is matchup strategy long. LMA. What? It's an hour and 20, right? Hour 24. We're fine. Like it's a 13 game slate. What do you expect from us? Anyway, appreciate you. You're the best. Clayton said, great show. You guys crushed as usual. Thanks for the free shit. Yeah, we appreciate you, man. Yo, I was looking, matter of fact, when I moved down here from my other office, Clayton, I was looking at the Iverson jersey that I was writing super chats on from all the people that supported the show. And your name was on there like 5 times from years ago. So, yeah, appreciate it, dude. All right. Well, Prize Picks, first match deposit bonus, $100. You get all our free tools. And as you guys always know, if you're in Colorado, Virginia, New Jersey, Ohio, Iowa, or Kentucky, bet 365. If you're in legal betting states, bet $5, get 150. If you're in Kentucky, bet $1, get $365. Easiest way to get free money and make sure you don't lose this week, even if you lose this week. You know what I mean? And also make sure, and it also allows you to shop the odds. That link's in the description. If you're in one of those states, these go away quickly. And we usually find out about it the morning of. Be like, hey guys, this is gone. So who knows when? I know Kentucky's disappearing soon. Bet one into 365. No matter what, check it out if you want, if you're in those states. Everything else, all our subs, 20% off NBA in the description. You guys are always make this fun, don't they? Always make it worthwhile, especially when we're doing it live in the chat.
So much more fun. So much more fun.
See you guys back here tomorrow on the Strategy Show. Remember, live before lock tonight for football, for basketball, deeper dive, all that good shit. See you back here soon. Peace.